When it comes to hiring, there's one thing that every business owner has to accept. There's always going to be some level of risk. You can never get it down to zero. But here's the difference. Smart founders know how to minimize that risk while still moving fast and building great teams. I've personally built 3 7-figure businesses. I've onboarded dozens of A players into my own companies. And through my recruitment service, we've helped thousands of business owners do the exact same thing. So in this video, I'm going to break down the real risks of hiring and walk you through the exact principles that I use to make this process safer, smarter, and more predictable so you can scale your business, hire people, and not have to second guess yourself about whether or not you just hired the right person and whether or not they're going to be a good long-term fit. Every single person that you hire in your career for your business and in the world of entrepreneurship is going to carry some level of risk. That's just how it is because you're hiring human beings. And guess what? That's normal and that's okay. The fundamental challenge here is that people themselves inherently are not entirely predictable. There's different things that you can do to try to understand them as much as possible before you go into your employment relationship with them. But look, at the end of the day, you never will know someone 100% before you hire them. Even if you get some really strong referrals, yes, that can be helpful, but still you don't know how they're going to be until you start working with them. Resumes, interviews, and even references can be helpful, but they're not going to reflect the exact reality that you're going to run into down the road once you start working together. So what smart founders do is they just accept reality for what it is. They say, okay, I'm hiring a person. People are unpredictable. There's going to be some risk associated with hiring the person. What can I do to minimize that? Smart founders and the successful founders know that there's a risk associated with hiring, but they do it anyways. They hedge their bets, they minimize risk, but the most important thing is they do not let this prevent them from taking action. The only way to build a successful business and to make money in the world is to repeatedly take massive action, test a ton of stuff, take risks, and rinse and repeat over and over and over and over. So if you're someone that's like so risk adverse, you won't even hire a virtual assistant for like $700 or $1,000 a month. I'm telling you right now, you just don't have the mindset that you need to have in order to build a business. There's always going to be some level of financial risk with building a business and with hiring people. So look, the moral of the story is when you're building your business, you've got to hire people, and hiring people is risky, and it is what it is, and that's normal, and that's okay. All right, so now let's go into the biggest sources of hiring risk. The first one really comes down to poor role clarity. So you're not very organized. You don't exactly know what you want to hire for. Maybe this is because you're not experienced, or maybe you're just unprepared and you haven't put in the work that's required to be prepared to know what you actually want to hire for. The next aspect that is going to increase your hiring risk is really just doing superficial screening. And what I mean by that is you're just going off of some generic resume review, or you're doing some cookie cutter interviews with some cookie cutter questions that you got online, and you don't have experience interviewing people. You don't understand psychology. You don't know the first thing about company culture and how to screen to see if someone's the right cultural fit. You don't know what red flags to look out for. Basically, you're just an inexperienced interviewer, but you think you can do it yourself. That right there is probably like the riskiest thing that you could possibly do. Funny enough, I have a recruitment company in which I help interview virtual assistants for you on your behalf all over the world. And we do this for so many people every single year. And even with that being my business, guess what? I don't even do my own interviews. I use my team to do my own interviews because I know that that's a huge source of risk, and I want to mitigate that by letting a professional handle it. Another source of hiring risk is really just rushing the hiring process. Some people come to us and they're like, hey, I need to hire this specific person, which is great. They have role clarity. And I know I'm not very good at doing this myself. Okay, so that's the second item that I said, and they've addressed that. So that's good. But I need this person in like 2 days. So not only is it incredibly unlikely that you're going to find anyone in 2 days, because that's very quick. I mean, you've got to get the job posted, you've got to get applicants coming in. Like, you can't even go through all the work in that time. But even if like for some reason we had a pool of like perfect people we would give to them immediately, which sometimes we do, the likelihood of them finding the right fit that quickly is pretty low. When you're hiring someone, it's very helpful if you have a range of people to compare and contrast from. Now, sometimes I like to compare this to going and either renting a house or buying a house. Let's say you move to a new city and you're like, all right, we want to go buy a house, but we've never been here. We don't even know where the good areas are. We have no idea what the market's like. For example, what can this amount of money bias in this area versus this area. And you just go in, you tour one house and you're like, boom, let's take it. Now, maybe you're very decisive, but more than likely you didn't get the best deal and you really didn't look at all the available options out there. Now, conversely, maybe you go and tour 5 to 10 houses. You compare and contrast. You see the pros and cons of each. Then you pick one after going through that comparison process. You're probably gonna end up with something that's a much better fit for you than if you just rushed it and bought the first one. The next source of hiring risk is really ignoring cultural fit. Maybe the person's great on paper, but they're gonna be wrong in practice. Let me give you a practical example so you can see what I'm saying. So the way that I run my particular sales team is pretty aggressive. We meet every day for 30 minutes. We show up. I do a lot of training. I've trained everyone on the team to have very direct, very concise and brief communications with me so that if they're gonna take up part of that 30-minute time slot that is so precious to us every day, it's gotta be packed with value. So if someone speaks up and it's something off topic, or maybe it's not even that relevant, or maybe it's just very low priority, and or when they're explaining it, they're like rambling and they're talking so freaking long to get the point across. I've basically trained that behavior to be like very narrow and vague and inefficient to be like completely on point, or ideally you just don't say anything. So anyways, moral of the story is that some people don't like that. I mean, I've had people join the team and like, you know, they're speaking up during the 30-minute meeting and they're the brand new person. And we've got like 7 or 8 or 9 other people in the meeting that are experienced and they're already successful and they know how the meetings run. And then I'm constantly like, actually like trying to proactively shut this person down because they're sucking up our time and they're not really talking about anything relevant. And then they just kind of get offended and they don't like it. And then also, like, we have everything so incredibly dialed in, from how we run the sales calls to how we follow up with people to how we set appointments, like literally everything from A to Z. And some people don't like to have to be that focused. They're just kind of inherently lazy and they have lower standards and they're really just not going to rise to the standard of my particular company and how I run things. So that right there would be a great example of someone who just isn't a cultural fit. Maybe they looked good on paper. Maybe I even liked the person, but once they come into my organization and they start interacting with everyone else in there and they start working with us day to day and I start pushing them up to our level of standards, maybe it's even the level of standard in which we service our clients and how we communicate with our clients. If they're just not going to get there and they're resisting that, we cut them immediately. You have to be able to screen for those types of things up front. Otherwise, what you're going to run into is you're going to onboard the person, train them, spend all this time with them, you're gonna lose momentum, it's just gonna be a headache. So now that we've gone over some things that are gonna increase your hiring risk, now let's talk about some principles that are gonna make things safer, they're gonna make you more successful, and most importantly, they're gonna help you make more money. Simply put, you wanna take all the things that I just talked about for the hiring risks, and we wanna flip them, and we just wanna do the opposite. So number one, we wanna have a clearly defined role. Before we go and post a job and we start talking to applicants, we wanna have a crystal clear outcome in mind. What is this person doing? Let's not wing it. Let's get clarity. If we have clarity and we can define what we want, we can go and get it. If we don't and we're vague and we're unclear, we're going to be running around. We're going to hire the wrong people. It's going to slow us down. No bueno. Next up, instead of the superficial screening I was talking about before, where you just don't know what you're doing and you're doing cookie cutter interviews back and forth and no one's actually saying anything. There's no effective or impactful communication to help screen these people. You need to have a dialed in process for screening tons of applicants fast. This includes proper interviews, test tasks, skill tests, work samples, and references. And then next up, like I went on a rant briefly about before, you need to make sure that they're culturally aligned with your company. You need to look at their values first and then look at their skills afterwards, because they might have the skills, but if they don't have the values, they're not gonna work. And then you need multi-step filtering, because every step of the process when you're screening people has some inherent risk. All right, so if you're like most founders that I know, you're probably listening to this and you're like, that's great, but like, you know, I still kind of want to do it fast. And I think the same way too. When I want to hire someone, I want them and I want them right now. Yes, while we do want to move quickly and we don't want to drag our feet, we don't want this to take longer than necessary. We do need to make sure that we hedge our risks and we're not just gambling. So make sure when you're screening people, when you're interviewing them and you're going through your whole hiring process, you don't want to skip these steps. Using test projects or even test tasks are really good ways to see if people are a good fit. You can get a sample of their work. You can see what it's going to be like to work with them before you actually actually hire them. Now, depending on your business and depending on the roles within your business and your growth trajectory and who you need to hire in the future, in an ideal world, what you want to do is you want to have a bench of pre-vetted candidates ready to go that you can tap into as soon as you need to hire them. This is how you can efficiently and correctly hire quickly without the risk. If you don't have the bench and a hiring need arises, then you either have two options. One, you rush it and you gamble, or two, you take your time and you do it correctly. So in a perfect world, you have the bench of candidates, your hiring need pops up, you tap into that bench, boom, you hire someone, you're done. For example, I need a new salesperson. Luckily for the last month and a half, my team has been screening a ton of salespeople in South Africa and Colombia. So literally yesterday, I was like, I need a new salesperson. A guy that I just hired wasn't working out. I'm slow to hire, quick to fire, so I'm cutting him loose. And now, thank God, because my team already has the bench of candidates ready, I have an interview lined up for today. There's a 90% chance I'm gonna hire this guy. Boom, I replaced the other guy. I didn't get slowed down. I was able to tap into him immediately. He was screened properly because he was being screened in the background before I needed him. And then the other thing that's good is the sales guy who I'm having to let go, I didn't invest any time into him. He went through my self onboarding process into my company. There's training modules, training videos. It's pretty much all self-paced driven. So he went through that and learned a ton on his own without my time investment. So now I'm unfortunately gonna have to cut him loose and I'm gonna replace him with the new guy. And then he'll go through that same self-paced training on his own. And then, hopefully it works out this time. But if it doesn't, I've still got that bench in the background. So with any hiring system, you need predictability. You need a process that is dialed in, that's going to get you consistent results where you can turn it on or you can tap into your bench and you can get people quickly, but they're also screened properly. When you follow the steps that I've outlined in this video, your hiring process can go from a gamble that produces inconsistent results, kills your momentum, slows you down, is frustrating, costs you money, is basically just a giant pain in the butt, and you can turn that into a candidate producing and interviewing machine and a conveyor belt where it's just spitting out A players all day long. So at the end of the day, every person that you hire is going to come with some inherent level of risk. Until we're able to hire AI agents and we just get rid of people entirely, just know, take this one thing away from this video, this one belief, there's always risk with hiring people, and that's okay and that's normal. But if you follow the principles in this video, you can turn your hiring process into a calculated, predictable process. And that's exactly how I've personally been able to build 3 7-figure businesses where I've hired over 100 people, all of which I believe to be A players. And I've helped thousands of other founders do the exact same thing through my recruitment company. So now instead of asking, will this person work out? You'll know that you've stacked the odds in your favor. And if you're ready to stop rolling the dice on hiring and you want a proven system to bring A players directly into your business without having to lift a finger, that's what we do. My team handles all the heavy lifting associated with hiring and finding virtual assistants, all the sourcing, all the vetting, all the interviewing, so that you don't have to waste time on wrong fits. Click the link below to book a call and we'll walk you through exactly how we can help you build your team the right way.